Welcome back to Gold Derby. I'm Christopher Rosen. I'm so pleased to be joined by the legendary costume designer Ruth E. Carter, a Oscar winner for Black Panther, a four-time Oscar nominee, and an Oscar nominee this year for Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. Congratulations, Ruth. It's an amazing honor. I wanted to ask you, what was it like hearing the news that you were nominated this year, especially after having won a few years ago for Black Panther?
It was really a super exciting moment because it was a sequel. And so you never go about any of these projects thinking about winning awards, but especially not a sequel, even though we knew we were adding so many amazing elements, and this was honoring our friend Chadwick. There were so many layers to our intention on this film that the nomination, well, the fans actually loved the film so much. That was the real prize, and it was thrilling to hear all the commentary from the moment the trailer dropped. So the moment that I heard that I'd been nominated, I felt like all of those fans who were enthusiastic about Wakanda Forever and had expressed love for the costumes, really got their day. And I got mine too.
Yeah, for sure. It's an incredible film. I rewatched it before we spoke here. You can watch it. People watch it now on Disney Plus if they have it. It's great.
Uh-huh.
To rewatch. It's just it's such a massive movie, obviously, and like I feel like it's so much bigger in scale and scope than the original, which was obviously massive. And then you have the incredible emotional impact, obviously, like you mentioned, of Chadwick having passed away, sadly, and then obviously T'Challa dying in the film, and it just is a really amazing undertaking. I wanted to ask you about like the opening scene. Watching it again, it just took my breath away. The memorial for T'Challa, and you have it's just the prologue of the movie. Basically, it's just incredible. You have the kind of celebration of his life, or T'Challa's life in Wakanda, and I was like, it's just an incredible visual like piece, and the costumes are beautiful, and everybody's dressed in white. But I want to ask you about like specifically how you kind of dealt with that, because you have all the different tribes, like all the costumes are always so different, right, from the different tribes, but they're all coming together and kind of at least in the same colors, but obviously the costumes have to be different, right, in that within that. So I guess how did you kind of approach that? And like, can you talk a little about that? I just was blown away by that whole sequence again.
I'm so glad you were blown away. I was blown away on set as well. It was a big undertaking because African cloth and the identifiers of African traditional garb is very multifaceted. It's colorful. It's lots of prints, sometimes many prints combined on one cloth. And there's mud cloth, there's color, there's always lots of color. So knowing that some African communities actually celebrate the life of a deceased by wearing white at funerals, it was challenging for me to find enough of the white fabrics that we could print on, because we couldn't find the African fabrics that have the prints. We had to create the prints so that it had texture and it had depth and it had story. Also, so you see Shuri with her shroud over her head, and you see a print. You see the heart shape to represent the heart-shaped herb, and Queen Ramonda's dress has embroidery, and that represents the Ndebele, the South African. So we brought all of this together in tones of white and tried to keep the white as pure as possible. And it unified all of the tribes. There's so much more to that procession that you don't see on camera. Just didn't make it. But you see enough of it to see that we told the story of the Turkana tribe and the Himba tribe and the Zulu. But there were many more coming into this procession that would have blown your socks off. It blew my socks off on set. And it really meant a lot to us. I think that was the moment that, all of that hard work culminating into that scene that we knew we were honoring Chadwick with, it just really spoke to our hearts, and that's a nice way of, you know, pouring your feelings and your passion and everything that you're feeling into the art of the film. And I think we're really lucky to have a medium that allows us to do that.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned too, like the idea that there's so much more we didn't see, but I do think that as a viewer, you kind of like sense that because it just feels like such an incredibly
Yes.
world that we're just like it doesn't feel like the movie is stopping outside the frame. You know what I mean? Like it is like the whole time, like that you're just like kind of like immersed in what you guys are creating. You mentioned Queen Ramonda, obviously, and Angela Bassett plays her, an Oscar nominee as well. That character obviously has gone through a lot since the first film. Can you talk about how you like went about dressing her for this to as opposed to like where we left her in the first film?
Yes, in the first film we created the queen, and in the comics, Queen Ramonda wears like yoga pants and she's barefoot. She wears the ishikolo, but it's very casual. And in the first film, I really wanted us to recognize who was the queen on that landing pad when the ship lands and T'Challa descends the Talon fighter. We know immediately who Queen Ramonda is. She stands there with her shoulder mantle and her ishikolo, her crown, but she's wearing a very soft color. She sits next to T'Challa at the throne. In Wakanda Forever, she is not only a queen, but now she is the ruler of Wakanda. She has taken the seat at the throne, and so we wanted to give her the power from the very start visually. And Ryan saw one of the sketches for her looks, and he chose what we see in the United Nations to be her entry, the first look that we see her in. And what that did really nicely was it balanced the first film where we recognized her right away as the queen. We recognized her right away in the UN as the ruler as she enters, and she's adorned in the purple and the gold. There are a lot of different pieces that she wore that helps tell her story. Like she wears a silver vibranium dress with one shoulder out. And when she sits on the throne in that dress, it is the same vibranium as the throne. So it all becomes one moment for her. She really does embody her seat at the throne.
Right. You've done so many movies, I feel like, with Angela, obviously, as well. Like, what is your collaboration like? And like, I guess, like, how do you like? How has that evolved? Obviously, over the years since you've worked, you know, like you said, so many times together.
We are like family. I've had fittings with her at my house. I've had fittings with her in Chicago. I've had fittings with her all over Los Angeles and Atlanta. And we just are very comfortable with each other. And I'm really thankful for that relationship because I know who's walking in. I have seen her prepare for so many different characters. Every time I work with her, I learn a little bit more about what she's going to bring and how I can communicate with her as far as telling this story of her character. And she looks in the mirror, she gives herself like the once over. She's trying to actually think about how she's going to play the role as she's adorned in the costumes. And that really does help me too to understand like how she's going to stand or how she's going to move or walk. And then we look at each other and have a laugh, you know. So you know, we don't take each other so seriously that we don't share what some of our personal lives are going through, you know, some of our triumphs and some of our pain. We're family like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like we could go through every costumer, but I wanted to ask you, obviously, there's Shuri takes up the mantle of Black Panther in this film. And the costume obviously is Black Panther costume, but
Yes.
it's its own thing. And I guess, how did you kind of go about making sure that it was like recognizably Black Panther, but also recognizably Shuri's Black Panther?
Yes, we were very careful in creating this costume in that we wanted to give her the dynamic form that a superhero embodies, the strength, the V shape. but we didn't want to exaggerate or make it look as though it wasn't Shuri. So we were very careful with the muscle sculpt, that where we added the dynamic muscles, that it made sense, that it didn't make her shoulders too broad or anything that would seem cartoonish or unrealistic. And the silver and the gold elements on the costume were shifted also to create, you know, a very attractive silhouette. And they also tell a story of good and evil. You know, she meets Killmonger, she's struggling. She has lost so much in this story. She's lost her brother, then she loses her mother. And so you know that she's conflicted. And I think that this costume allows us to explore both sides. You remember gold was what Killmonger, his suit was adorned with gold, and the Black Panther, T'Challa's suit was simply vibranium silver. So she has both. And I think that tells a larger story for her.
You mentioned Killmonger, obviously, and you've got Michael B. Jordan back here for that brief scene. What was it like? I mean, had you approached dressing Killmonger in the you know where we see him, I guess?
Yeah, well, we wanted to bring back one of his strongest silhouettes, and that sweater he wears on the landing pad in the first film was one of his strongest looks. So he wears no shirt, and he has all the scars, and he has this black knit in the first film. So that was the thing that we remembered the most, that had the biggest impression on us. And because of the nature of the scene where they had to be wearing white, we knit that sweater in white, the same exact one he had in the first film.
That's awesome. And then we've been talking this all the time and haven't even brought up Namor and Talcott, which is just this incredible world.
Yeah.
Another new world that you completely just basically create out of, you know, like whole cloth, basically, I guess. And like, it's just amazing. It looks amazing. And then the other thing, watching it again, I'm like, it's all underwater. So I'd imagine you also have to take into account how this will look or wear underwater, right? Like I guess where'd you start on that? And like, how'd you kind of figure that all out?
Yeah, in the planning of the creation of these costumes, we did explore all of the elements that water would, you know, adhere to, be compatible with. But there were also other things that, you know, we hoped that, you know, wouldn't bleach out from the chemicals in the water. Water just has its own mind. It does its own thing. And as much as you want everything that goes in the water to be beautiful ballet, it just really, gravity takes over and it just goes up straight. So we weighted a lot of costumes, we tethered them, and we learned a lot. I mean, we were very much a part of the, you know, historic journey of this film by connecting the Tolokans to the Mayans, this historic anchor of the film, and then taking it underwater and bringing in the elements of the ocean. And so you see Nemora's costume honoring the lionfish, you know, and then Atuma with the hammerhead shark, the bones. And we talked to oceanographers, and they told us, you know, what was down there. A lot of bones are down there for sure. So it was a journey, and you know, I spent a lot of sleepless nights trying to figure things out because it was a big responsibility.
Yeah, but it really pays off, I guess. I mean, like you mentioned before, like doing a sequel like this is like getting this kind of recognition for it. And obviously the bar on the first one was so high, and you guys kind of like definitely seeming like achieved, at least reached that same bar, right? Or you know, maybe even surpassed it, certainly. Do you have like what for you was like the most gratifying part of working on this film, I guess, like looking back now?
Yeah, I feel that the most gratifying part was the amount of artists that we were able to engage and that touched these costumes, that we had incredible sculptors and painters We had incredible organizers, and we went all over the world. We were in New Zealand making the Tola Canil. We were in India beating Ramonda's dresses. We were all over Los Angeles. Film Illusions made the Panther suit in the first film. They made the Panther suit again in this film. So we were reuniting with teams that we knew that I learned from on the first film. I'd never done a superhero film on the first, and now I was returning to a lot of teams that actually, guided me step by step, and we were on another journey together. So that was really rewarding, just to be able to collaborate on this level, with Ryan Coogler, who had to actually like take the mantle after we lost our friend. He had to kind of be our hero and write a new story, and he did that through his own grieving process. So it was like the coming together of artists and family and friends that was the most rewarding. And I think the costumes show that we really cared, we really loved these cultures, we really wanted to do our best work, and we put the detail in to express that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, the attention to detail from your costumes and like the whole thing is just incredible, and like it's really it really immerses the viewer, I think, in a way that it's like great. It's just amazing. It kind of enhances the viewing beyond just the story and obviously everything else. It really feels like this is a real world that we're entering. And I think that's
a real world.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. On the bridge is one of my favorite scenes, where they come out of water. It's so unexpected. And you see this crash scene, you see Okoye going over to console Shuri to see if she's okay. And then out of the water comes Namora and Atuma and then Namor. It's just so unexpected, and it's a wonderful way of entering costumes in the scene.
Yeah, definitely.
Lucky me.
That seems awesome. And it's a great Ruth E. Carter, an Oscar nominee for Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.